You're listening to UnitedWeStrike.com radio. Don't buy, don't comply. Ask why. UnitedWeStrike.com radio.
I hope you enjoyed that little piece from the Piano Guys. And yeah, for those of you who listened to last month's United We Strike marathon, you probably recognized that David Frank recording as having been recorded from last month's program. Yeah, for whatever reason, we were not able to raise David live this time, so we did a rebroadcast of last month's programming. Needless to say, the connection problems continue. My next presenter was to be Vinny Eastwood and his cohort in crime, Susanne Posel, and for whatever reason, Vinny is MIA today. So we're staring barbs and arrows at Vinny. All right, man, where were you? But in any case, we do have Susanne lined up, and I'm going to hang in with her and comment on what she has to talk about. I'm going to bring Susanne live now, and I just hit the button, Susanne, so I hope I didn't catch you right in the middle of doing something important. We are live. The whole world is listening.
Hello, world. How are you? I'm doing just fine.
And they love that contagious laugh of yours, so, So
here's something.
We don't know what happened to Vinny. First of all, let's get this out of. We really don't know what happened to Vinny. We don't know for sure if he got hit by a bus or
Oh God, no! Don't say that.
Yeah, that would be a bad thing to even think about, wouldn't it?
No, nothing bad happening. Vinny is one of the most amazing people I've ever known in my whole life.
Well, we don't wish
we need him around for a long, long time.
We don't wish him any ill, but we are definitely going to take him out to the woodshed next time we catch up to him and give him a whooping for not being available when we hit the button.
Oh, I might give him a good talking to.
Yeah, you do that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm going to pull the mother hat on. I'm going to tell him what for.
In any case, we've only got about 25 minutes. These are very short segments on the United We Strike broadcast, and I know you have probably got a mail hopper that is overflowing with interesting little tasty tidbits. So what's been going on recently, Susanne?
Well, everyone start smacking your lips because Cornell University scientists are training robots how to stab people with a knife. Okay? And you know why they're doing this? So they can teach them how not to stab people with knives. Isn't that great? So hand your kids scissors because then you can teach them how not to cut themselves. That make any sense to any parents? Every parent is shaking their head.
Yes. How does one not run with scissors? Well, you grab some scissors and you run around the room with them a few times. Yeah, that doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. I remember reading Isaac Asimov back when I was a kid, and there were these 3 cardinal rules that you gave every robot, and the first and foremost was self-preservation, followed closely by you will not, by your own action or inaction, allow anything bad to happen to a human being. Now, why you would teach your favorite robot to run around with scissors just does not make a whole lot of sense to me.
No, it doesn't make any sense to me either, but they're doing it, and we're talking about robots that rethink robotics. The same people who, along with Boston Dynamics, have been given money by DARPA and using academic universities to create these robots and create the software and use their ingenuity. And these gentlemen got together and posed the question, well, how will it understand that it should not poke a human with a knife? Well, you teach it to poke humans with knives, and then you say, don't do that. Bad robot. Don't do that. Don't poke people. Makes no sense whatsoever. If you want somebody or something not to do something, just don't teach it how to do it. Period. Your dog, your child, your neighbor, your friend, whoever it is. Just keep it out of the equation. So let's talk about things that are out of the equation.
I'm listening.
Google has now been ordered by the High Court in Paris to block access to search results containing compromising pictures of Max Mosley, former Formula One racing president, because he went to a sadomasochistic sex party that happened to be Nazi-themed.
Well, he says it wasn't Nazi-themed, but some of the pictures sure made it. Let's put it this way. There were some kinky pictures. Did you see the pictures?
Yeah, my son went as Frankenstein for Halloween. Now, he didn't look exactly like Frankenstein, but it was close enough. And I would use that logic here. I saw those pictures.
And, Suzanne, I am not a prude, okay? I mean, I am really not a prude. And what somebody does in the privacy of their bedroom and who they do it with, frankly, I don't care if they're, hiring a half a dozen hookers or whatever. I tend to, I'm just not that voyeuristic. It's none of my freaking business. But when you are a person of note, you have no right to privacy, shall we say. And if these pictures happen to come out, I don't care how embarrassing they are. I'm sorry, but that's news. And if Google chooses to report that as news and include the kinky photographs, that's just not right that a government would say, no, you can't show that stuff because it's embarrassing? Well, duh!
Well, they said that they are requesting that Google set up a censorship machine to protect celebrities from having these kind of posts put out as headlines on the News of the World website, which said F1 boss has sick Nazi orgy with 5 hookers.
I remember back in the day. Now, of course, I'm probably a little older than you, but I remember back in the day we had a president in the United States named Kennedy, and everybody around the Beltway knew that Kennedy liked the ladies, and that the ladies apparently liked him. But that aside, it was generally not reported in the news. It was all understood, kind of tongue-in-cheek that, Kennedy was sleeping around here, there, and everywhere. Everybody knew, but it wasn't discussed in the news because it was considered impolite. Now, the definition of polite is kind of a generational thing, and later, I remember distinctly then Jacqueline Onassis being photographed on a beach somewhere off of an island in Greece with a very long lens, and apparently she was sunbathing topless. Heavens forbid, And I remember that made the news right away. So the idea of privacy kind of changed during that, early 1960s to early 1970s period during that time. And in more recent years, we've got, every celebrity out there has been photographed in some compromising position. And of course it hits every tabloid out there. What makes this guy in France so damn special, Suzanne? I mean, why is this guy hands off?
Well, what's interesting to me about that's a good point, but I focused my article on the fact that Google is being ordered to remove source links, and make it so that people can't search this on the internet. So this sets precedent. Yes, it's in France, and yes, it's a celebrity.
What do you think? But is this something that is uniquely French, or can we expect the same type of thing to happen here in the United States next week?
Well, I think it's the latter. You could have it happening anywhere. These kind of cases set precedent, and then it gives credence to another case that comes up, and then another case. Before you know it, you have 5 or 6 cases that set buku's amount of precedent for more cases. Then before you know it, you can't search anything on the internet because somebody said it was offensive.
So the next time Dick Cheney happens to, shoot one of his hunting partners, that may not. We may not be able to report that because, it's embarrassing to Mr. Cheney and his family.
Absolutely, and you wouldn't be able to show any pictures of anything incriminating because it might be embarrassing.
Yeah, that is a difficult precedent to let
This
stand.
is allowing the subversion of free speech.
I happen to know
it's
a little
not
bit
directly
about the technology involved here, too, and I can tell you that, for Google to pull that off is going to be a really neat trick.
Sure.
I mean, I can think of a couple of ways I could do it, but, man, they're going to have to put a special filtering program in their search algorithm. It's going to be a real expensive issue for them to filter this one incident out of their search engine. It's going to cost Google a ton of dough.
Mm-hmm. So, there's other things that
it's going to have a chilling effect is what I'm afraid of. Okay, so now Google has been held out as an example where they've been forced to spend a ton of dough to filter this one little incident. Well, shoot, that's going to make all the other search engines say, oh boy, we better not have anything searchable on any celebrity intrigue because, if we get sued and we lose, we're going to be in the same boat Google is. We're going to spend a fortune to filter that out.
Yes, and that is its purpose. That is the purpose of this whole entire debacle, is to set a precedent, to set a chilling effect, like you mentioned, and make it so that either we police ourselves or we get policed. It's a subversion of free speech. It's not an outright attack on free speech. It's a subversive tactic. You just make sure that people who can say that this material, this document, this picture, this video is offensive to me, or puts me in a bad light, and there was an expectation of privacy on my part when this information was siphoned.
Yeah, when I hired those 5 hookers and we all put on Nazi uniforms, I expected privacy, The terrible thing is I'm so much I don't even want to think about that image, let alone see it. But,
Oh, yeah. But listen to this one. Listen to this. 2 years ago, Carol Ann Bond was convicted of poisoning her husband's mistress, pregnant mistress. She was convicted under violation of the 1998 Chemical Weapons Convention Implementation Act. She was convicted of using chemical weapons against the mistress of her husband. And right now in the Supreme Court, they're discussing why the prosecution used and was successful in using the International UN Chemical Weapons Treaty to prosecute a citizen for poisoning her husband's mistress. Now, I'm not condoning the poisoning of any person, but it is not that she unloaded sarin gas into this woman's house. She mixed some chemicals and tried to poison her. There's a big distinction between wartime and war use chemicals, and giving somebody a cup of Drano.
Yeah, when I think of chemical weapons, I think of something designed to take out a large number of people. When I think of a poisoning, I think of something very specific, very targeted, and both of them are not real pleasant things to consider doing to somebody, but we're talking a whole another level here when you start talking about chemical weapons as opposed to a little bit of arsenic and lace.
Yes, absolutely. The justices were discussing that there needs to be a distinction between warlike use of chemical weapons and the actions of Carol Ann Bond, because the framers, they said the framers gave the federal government exclusive control over the treaty function to ensure that it could not knit a nation together as one, but allow for full sovereignty and conduct with regard to foreign affairs. So she's not using like mustard gas or sarin gas. No, she mixed up a couple of chemicals. She probably found them in her under her sink, and that brought me to another idea. What if under your sink you have a couple of things that put together or individually could be considered a chemical weapon that you could use to poison people?
Well, now, Susanne, I don't want to, there's too many people listening, so I would not want to come right out and admit to the fact that, there are indeed chemicals under the sink in my kitchen, that someone even with my IQ, an IQ equal to about your shoe size, even I know that if I take a little bit of Clorox and a little bit of ammonia, or I shouldn't even say that on an open channel, but common cleaning chemicals, common household cleaning chemicals that can be mixed, and the end result is a noxious gas that in a confined space could seriously hurt, if not kill, many, many people. Now, just because I happen to keep some common cleaning products under the sink in my kitchen, does that put me in the same league with Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction? What do you think? I mean, are we going to have to start sending TSA inspectors by to check under everybody's kitchen sink now?
Well, the TSA wants guns because of that LAX shooting. They want guns. They want to, even though the security around the airport are armed guards.
Well,
they already
first
have guns.
of all, on a philosophical basis, I would not deny a TSA agent a gun. But my argument would be, if he's allowed to have a gun, I'm allowed to have a bazooka.
Well, these are pedophiles. These are not,
Well,
and they're
no,
not
trained. We can't make that. We can't just, because they're not all pedophiles.
They're not all.
I happen to know some people who wear that TSA uniform, and the only reason they wear it is because, frankly, they could not find any other gig. Now, they may, one of the guys I know who right now works for the TSA used to manage a tire store, okay? He was the guy who was changing the tires on your car last year, but, the company he worked for went out of business. He couldn't find any other gig. TSA offered him a gig. He's got a wife and kids to support, a mortgage to pay like everybody else. For him, hey, it was a job. It pays the rent. Now, this guy is probably embarrassed about a lot of the stuff he has to do, because I know this guy, and, he's not real comfortable with the idea of having to fondle people, and, he's not into, he's not a sicko like that. Now, I'm sure that some who apply for those jobs probably do think it's pretty cool to be able to fondle people, but and having that type of position probably attracts that type of applicant. But it would be a shame to, with a broad brush, say they're all pedophiles or they're all gropers. Some of them, I suspect, are terribly embarrassed by some of the things they're ordered to do.
No, you're right. You're right, and I apologize. To make a blanket statement is ignorant, and you're right. I just find it highly suspect that we have more shootings under Obama. More people have died in mass shootings than even under the Clinton administration, and they put that moratorium on certain guns, that we can't have access to, even though the government and the military can. So
Have you noticed that all the shootings happen in no-gun zones, too,
Sure. Kids have the guy in California who shot the 13-year-old recently 7 times. He had a toy gun. You're telling me the officer couldn't and he was across the street from the kid, and he said it looked like a real gun. He couldn't walk across the street and take the gun from a 13-year-old boy. He's a grown man. He's a police officer. He can't do that. No, he has to shoot him 7 times and then walk over and then realize that it's a toy gun. I don't know if having more weapons in the hands of federal agencies is appropriate. In fact, I don't think it is, especially when we're in a position where we're having to explain ourselves, even though we have a Second Amendment right to have a gun.
Well, the shooting in California is a tragic event, and I don't know all the particulars on that. My understanding is there might have been some kind of a language barrier. Apparently, the young kid who got shot, was not an English speaker, and the police officer probably gave him what he thought was very clear, very specific instructions to drop what to him looked like a weapon. And the kid, was either scared or intimidated or whatever, decided to, feet don't fail me now, let me get the heck out of here. And, and of course the results were tragic. I will agree with you, though, that in all too many cases that have been reported over the last few years, the police seem mighty quick to shoot these days. A lot quicker to shoot than we were led to believe that they were. You know, when we used to watch the Andy of Mayberry and Deputy Fife was only allowed to have one bullet and he had to keep it in his pocket. I always, I grew up thinking cops were kind of like that. You know, Andy never even carried a gun. Barney had one, but he only had one bullet and it was in his pocket. So he had to really be serious about wanting to shoot somebody to get ready and loaded and ready to go. That's the way we'd like to think our cops operate. Here recently, they almost seem to operate like, they're military occupiers in Fallujah.
Yes, and that's what concerns me. Having more government agencies having access to guns when we don't bothers me. The fact that everybody's trigger happy bothers me.
What do you mean, we, white woman?
Yeah, right?
I tell you, I will not be disarmed. Again, you're almost scared to even say something like that on an open microphone. But I will not be disarmed under any circumstances. I don't care. They can pass all the laws they want. There is a higher law, and the highest law I know is that as a human being, I am allowed to protect myself. I ain't going to go looking for trouble, but if it happens to come and find me, I will be prepared to deal with it as best I possibly can. Win or lose, at least I want a fighting chance. Would I take the guns away from the federal agents and the cops? Well, that guy who was real quick to shoot out in California, I don't think I want him with a gun anymore, but that doesn't mean I want to disarm all the federal agents and all the cops. I mean, there is a legitimate argument for a policeman or a law enforcement officer or whatever to go about armed. I mean, I'm not going to argue that they should not be armed. But, carrying a weapon carries with it certain responsibilities. And if you can't handle those responsibilities, then you got no right having the gun, period.
I agree with you. And they're using this. Holder came out in October, and he was speaking at a International Association of Chiefs of Police annual conference. And he's pushing for, because there are so many active shooters out there, they want pre-crime. They want more pre-crime. They want the police departments to use everything at their disposal to profile people, to violate their Fifth Amendment rights by different types of surveillance ways that they're extracting data and profiling citizens so that the police know better. And they want to actively seek out people who may commit a violent act and get them before they actually do it. And that's where
Minority Report. I mean, we're talking about Minority Report. Did you? I don't know if you even saw the movie.
Yeah, I read the book. Yeah.
So we got to deal with. Oh my goodness!
That's where this is all going, and I, whether or not the TSA should have guns, I don't think that they should, but. Now they're going and saying that there's so many active shooters out there, it's become absolutely ridiculous and out of control. And since 2009, 2012, 404 people were shot, 207 actually dying. From 2008, within the 2008 year, 324 people were shot, with 145 people actually dying. And so they want to use the Behavioral Threat Assessment Center with the FBI to look at these people, to anticipate their acts of violence before they commit them, and make sure that there are no more mass shootings, because we've taken the people off the streets who may have committed a mass shooting at some point. And
is there any place to go? Is there any place to run? I mean, is there a nation in the world that is still sane? I mean, if the United States actually tries to enforce something like that, I would have to argue that the United States has lost its sanity.
Oh, we lost our sanity a long time ago. It was programmed right out of us.
Well, I don't know. For the longest time, I've been giving the benefit of the doubt, saying, okay, they're just becoming a little senile, but. Suzanne, we are running very close to that magical moment where our carriage turns back into a pumpkin. We got about a minute here, and I don't want to let you go without giving you an opportunity to do some blatant self-promotion. Tell people where they can find out more about the arguments that you're putting on the table.
OccupyCorporatism.com is my website. I also have a radio show, Hardline, with Susanne Posel, Tuesday and Thursday, 1 to 3 Pacific Time. It's broadcast on the Time for Hemp Broadcasting Network on iHeartRadio. And you can go to hardlineradio.com to find out who I'm having as a guest this month and suggest a guest if you want. And that's where I am. That's where you can find me.
Now, do you want to give a little plug to Vinny, even though he was a no-show tonight?
Yes. TheVinnyEastwoodShow.com. Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question. And Eastwood as in, go ahead, make my news. Did I say that right?
You did. And I'll tell you, on that note, I gave us every second I could give us. I'm going to take us out with a little bit of All Along the Watchtower, a little classic Jimi Hendrix. Here we go.